Well, this was a big week in transgender news for all the wrong reasons. Hey listeners, welcome to Straight Wife Trans Life. I'm Lisa. First, Elon Musk said his transgender child was killed by the woke mind virus, while top YouTuber Mr. Beast's longtime friend and sidekick, Ava Chris Tyson, who is transgender, has been accused of grooming. My immediate thoughts for each were cue the fresh batch of anti-transgender hate and comments. The Elon Musk news is no surprise for anyone who is paying attention, but when someone very well known in YouTube circles, whether you are a creator or enjoy the content, that kind of accusation, it makes it easier for transphobic people to spread hate. And that can add fuel to a negative environment for the transgender community and for us, the spouse or partner, the family member, the child of a transgender person, because people who are anti-transgender don't seem to realize that transgender people have family or friends or a life. And there we are, caught in this hate web, and it is tiring. I'm tired too. In this episode, I want to explore how we can educate ourselves and prepare responses when we come across transphobia, which we will. Hopefully, with a little preparation, we can restore some energy. Let's begin with what transphobia is so we are all on the same page. I really like this overview by Transactual UK because it doesn't sugarcoat anything. It states, the core value underlying all transphobia is a rejection of trans identity and a refusal to acknowledge that it could possibly be real or valid. It continues, and I think each of these 4 sentences are important. Transphobia has no single, simple manifestation. It is complex and can include a range of behaviors and arguments. The consequence of transphobia is that trans people struggle to live openly and comfortably in society. An ultimate outcome may be the erasure of trans people as a viable class of people. Hooey, that is not good. And we see it around us. The anti-transgender folks are very active. There are anti-transgender laws being introduced, some passing, some failing. There are people leaving states to feel safer and get access to what they need. And there are others who can't leave. They are suffering. And now this week in the news comes 2 words transphobic people love to combine: transgender grooming. So transphobic people now feel like they have an argument against all transgender people. Can you imagine if we just heard about Jeffrey Dahmer in the news, a white male serial killer, and started accusing all white men of being serial killers and sex offenders? Just think about that for a bit. For those of us who have transgender friends and family and consider ourselves allies, it is tiring to have to explain, to educate, and stand up for a transgender loved one. But you know what? It needs to be done because people are scared of what they don't know. They are ignorant, whether by choice or environment. We are living it. We know transgender people. We love transgender people. So let's explore how we can respond to transphobia. One way is through practicing conversation. On the website Medium, and as always, I will include links in the episode description, there is a graphic with sample responses to potentially harmful statements against transgender people. And I like how the author words this. The author is Asher Firestone. He says that brings people into the conversation and prevents future potential harm against transgender people. Here are some examples from that piece. If someone says, "Isn't gender biological?" you can respond with, "Gender actually has nothing to do with the sex you were assigned at birth. It is often informed by a specific culture's gender norms, many of which have changed over time." Another statement in the graphic reads, "Well, I still don't think parents should be letting their children change their bodies at such a young age. It's going to lead to social and mental health problems for those children." Your response could be, The root cause of social and mental health problems for trans children is actually bullying and misgendering by parents, teachers, and peers. In fact, when people use the correct pronouns for trans people, suicide attempt rates are reduced in half. Why is this something that you are personally concerned about? There are a few more examples that are worth checking out, and this leads me to another way to prepare your response. Know your history. Learn some facts that you can keep handy. Because when you understand more about transgender history, culture, people, and how far it goes back, it goes far. When someone says something like, "It feels like a new trend," you can say, "Did you know all sorts of genders outside of male and female existed in pre-colonial times?" And then you can use your knowledge to back it up. So I'm going to include some links to a few books that can be a great place to start for some history, and recommend signing up for newsletters, and even watching the movie Next Goal Wins and inviting a friend over to watch it with you could be a great conversation starter. I just recently saw that movie, so it's fresh in my brain. Beyond preparing what you are going to say, now the question is, how do you say it so people listen? How do you try not to argue, but to have this more pleasant notion of a conversation in a constructive way? And I know that is not as easy as it sounds. So, Amnesty International in New Zealand has a few tips for you in an article titled, "How to Tell Someone You Know They're Being Transphobic." This article describes transphobia as consisting of 3 main parts: stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. And from those 3 come a range of behaviors from making derogatory jokes to not allowing a trans person to use a restroom. There are different levels and ways of being transphobic, which we are aware of. And I want to go through the 5 tips in the article because they're all really thoughtful, and I think they will help allies in speaking with transphobic people in a respectful manner, a nicer approach. The first suggestion is to make sure that someone is really being transphobic by clarifying what they meant. Sometimes we do jump to conclusions, right? It happens. We're human. Just make sure you heard correctly or read their note correctly. How many times has a work or family email come across one way and it was actually meant another way? Second is to have a private conversation. And I love how this is worded. Call them in, don't call them out. So if you want to have a constructive conversation, do it privately. Personally, I like having the big conversations over a good meal or a glass of wine. It makes it sort of a comfortable setting and puts everyone at ease. Third, use I statements. I think a lot of us might be aware of this one. If you say, "You are being transphobic," you won't get far. The other person is going to put up a wall and go into defensive mode, which is definitely something that I would do. If you say, "I don't feel like that was a respectful thing you did. I'm not sure I understood that," or "I don't think that was very nice," might work out in your favor. The fourth tip is to share experiences. Personal stories can build empathy, or invite someone to an event where a transgender person is speaking, or ask someone to join you at a local pride event or another type of event. Or watch that movie that I just mentioned, Next Goal Wins. So last year, I didn't go to our local pride event with my spouse because I was still having moments of processing our situation, and I didn't want to go. This year, we did go as a family, and it was our 11-year-old son's first time watching a drag performance. And we asked him about it afterward, and he was surprised that the performers were men. He didn't know. What was really nice was to see other families there with kids enjoying a day out and just showing support for the community. All right, moving on to tip number 5, think about language. I'm going to read this one verbatim. Remember that your words have the potential to dehumanize people, even if you're trying to combat someone else's harmful speech. Ooh, that's good. So referring to people in groups like trans people might reinforce a stereotype and instead try to focus on individuals in your language. And the article gives the example, how do you think that person would feel about being excluded? Such a great tip because I do often use the group reference without thinking about it, and saying that person would probably have a lot more impact. Great tips. So 2 big things to remember: how to address transphobia with these 5 tips, and doing your research so you can back up your statements as an ally to the transgender community. Learn some history, go to some events, get to know transgender people or your local LGBTQ plus community. Doing things like that and understanding what's going on is going to be really helpful when it comes time to respond to somebody who is transphobic. Until next time, stand up, speak up, show up, and call people in versus calling them out. I just love that. Keep it classy.